You have questioned whether the avoidant feels genuine pain about losing you, whether someone so defended could experience the depth of grief that losing significant relationship should generate, whether their patterns of emotional unavailability mean they can simply move forward without the suffering you experience about the loss. The avoidant's defended presentation during and after the relationship suggests they are fine, unbothered, perhaps even relieved to be free from relational obligations that their defended position found burdensome. They maintain distance that appears comfortable, demonstrate no visible distress, show no signs of the grief and longing that consume you in the aftermath of losing someone you loved deeply. You interpret this apparent ease as confirmation that they did not care as much as you did, that you were more invested than they were, that losing you costs them little, while losing them devastates you in ways that feel disproportionate to their apparent indifference. Yet this interpretation misses crucial truth about how avoidants experience and express pain about loss, about how their defensive structure shapes the manifestation of grief in ways that make genuine suffering invisible to those who expect pain to look like the open emotional expression that secure or anxious individuals demonstrate when grieving significant loss. The avoidant does feel profound pain about losing you when you were the right person, when you offered patience and understanding they could not adequately reciprocate, when you saw beneath their defenses to the wounded human underneath, when you provided consistency and acceptance that created rare safe space where they could occasionally lower their defenses, when you loved them more generously than their defended limitations deserved or could adequately receive. Yet the avoidance pain about losing the right person manifests through defended channels that protect them from fully experiencing the grief, while simultaneously revealing through specific behavioral patterns that they are suffering in ways their conscious awareness may not fully acknowledge. The avoidant shows pain not through tears or direct expression of missing you, not through reaching out to express remorse or to attempt reconnection, not through visible deterioration that would make their suffering obvious to observers. Instead, the avoidant demonstrates pain through obsessive monitoring of your life from defended distance, through self-destructive patterns that replace healthy coping mechanisms, through inability to find in subsequent connections what you provided, through becoming, in future relationships, the person you needed after losing you taught them what their defended limitations cost them. Understanding how the avoidant shows pain after losing the right person allows you to recognize that their apparent indifference may conceal genuine suffering. Their defensive structure prevents them from expressing directly, allows you to see that your interpretation of their ease may not reflect their actual internal experience, allows you to understand that someone can feel profound pain about loss, while their defended patterns prevent that pain from manifesting in recognizable ways that would make their suffering visible to the person they lost. The pain manifests through compulsive monitoring without ever reaching out. The avoidant demonstrates their pain about losing you through obsessive pattern of monitoring your life from defended distance, consuming every piece of available information about you, tracking your activities through social media, maintaining hypervigilant awareness of your state and your movements, while simultaneously maintaining complete silence that prevents any direct contact or communication. This compulsive monitoring reveals the avoidant's genuine suffering, because it demonstrates they cannot move forward or redirect their attention elsewhere, despite their defended presentation, suggesting they have released you easily. Someone who was genuinely unbothered by losing you would not invest substantial time and energy tracking your life, would not check your social media profiles repeatedly throughout each day, would not maintain constant awareness of your activities and your state. The monitoring exposes that you occupy ongoing space in the avoidance awareness despite their silence suggesting they have moved on, that they remain psychologically oriented toward you in ways that contradict their defended distance. The compulsive quality of the monitoring particularly reveals the avoidance pain, because it exceeds what casual interest or mild curiosity would generate. The avoidant does not occasionally check how you are doing when you randomly cross their mind. They systematically track your life with consistency that indicates you are constantly on their mind, that they cannot resist consuming information about you, despite that information often causing them pain, by showing you moving forward or appearing happy without them. The avoidant views your social media stories within minutes of you posting them, demonstrating they are checking your profile with such frequency that they encounter new content almost immediately. They scroll through your posts obsessively, analyzing every photo and caption for information about your emotional state, your activities, whether you might be seeing someone new. They track who interacts with your content, potentially feeling jealous about people who have access to you that they no longer possess. The monitoring without reaching out reveals the specific nature of the avoidance pain. They are suffering from longing and loss while simultaneously feeling unable to act on that longing, because their shame, their fear of rejection, or their conviction that you do not want to hear from them prevents them from translating their obsessive awareness of you into direct contact. The avoidant wants to know everything about your life, wants to maintain connection to you through consuming information about you, yet they cannot take the vulnerable step of reaching out directly to ask how you are or to express that they miss you. This paralysis between desire for connection and inability to pursue connection creates sustained psychological suffering, where the avoidant exists in constant state of longing they cannot satisfy, of wanting contact they cannot initiate, of maintaining awareness of you that keeps you present in their psychological world, while actual connection remains impossible, because their defended limitations prevent the vulnerable pursuit that direct contact would require. The content the avoidant monitors particularly reveals what aspects of losing you create their most acute pain. The avoidant may obsessively check content showing you happy or thriving, demonstrating they are tortured by evidence that you are doing well without them, that you have moved forward successfully, that losing them did not create permanent damage but rather created space for you to build better life. This monitoring of your happiness reveals the avoidant's pain because it confirms their fears that they were not as necessary to your well-being as they hoped, that you are capable of thriving without them, that they are witnessing from excluded distance the life you are living that no longer includes them. Alternatively, the avoidant may obsessively check for any signs that you are struggling or still processing the loss, demonstrating they need evidence that you still care about them, that losing them affected you significantly, that they retain some significance in your life even after the relationship has ended. The avoidant experiences particular suffering when their monitoring reveals you potentially involved with someone new, or shows you engaging with life in ways that suggest you have genuinely moved beyond them, seeing you on dates, observing you appearing happy with new people, witnessing you building connections that do not include them, forces the avoidant to confront that they are being replaced, that you are allocating your time and attention and affection to others, that the space they once occupied in your life is being filled by people who can presumably provide what their defended limitations prevented them from offering. This observation generates acute pain because it makes the loss feel more permanent and more real. You are not waiting for them or remaining oriented toward potential future with them, but rather are actively building life with new people that definitively excludes them. The monitoring also causes the avoidant pain through forcing constant reminders of what they lost and what their patterns cost them. Each photo of you they view, each story they watch, each post they read, operates as a reminder that you exist and are living your life without them, that they no longer have access to you or to your presence, that their patterns destroyed relationship with someone who mattered to them more than their defended position allowed them to demonstrate. The accumulated effect of these constant reminders creates sustained suffering that the avoidant cannot escape because they cannot stop monitoring your life, despite that monitoring consistently generates pain. The compulsion to monitor exceeds their capacity to protect themselves from the pain that monitoring creates, revealing how profoundly they are struggling with the loss. The avoidance monitoring pattern also reveals their pain through what they do with the information they gather. They do not simply observe your life neutrally, but rather process what they see through lens of regret, longing, and self-recrimination. The avoidant sees you happy and thinks about how they could not provide that happiness when they had access to you. They see you thriving and recognize that their absence has not diminished your life in ways they perhaps hoped it would, because some part of them needs to believe they mattered enough that losing them would create lasting impact. They see you with new people and torture themselves, imagining that these new connections provide what they could not, that you are receiving from others The consistency and emotional availability their defended position prevented them from offering. Understanding that the avoidance pain manifests through compulsive monitoring without reaching out requires recognizing that this pattern demonstrates intense suffering, that their defensive structure prevents them from expressing directly or acting upon in ways that would be visible to you. The avoidant cannot move on, cannot redirect their attention elsewhere, cannot stop thinking about you, all evidence of genuine pain about the loss. Yet their pain manifests through defended channel of obsessive observation from distance rather than through vulnerable direct contact, through consuming information about you rather than through seeking actual connection with you, through maintaining you constantly in their awareness while simultaneously maintaining the defended silence that prevents you from knowing how much they are suffering. The monitoring reveals that losing you has created ongoing crisis. The avoidant cannot resolve. They cannot have you because their patterns cost them the relationship. Yet they cannot release you because their attachment persists despite the loss, leaving them trapped in painful liminal space where they remain psychologically bound to someone they can no longer access. They demonstrate grief through self-destructive patterns that replace healthy coping. The avoidance pain about losing you manifests through deterioration in their self-care, their choices, and their behavioral patterns. Deterioration that reveals they are not managing the loss healthily, but rather are engaging in self-destructive behaviors that serve as both expression of their suffering and as attempt to numb or escape from pain. They lack adequate capacity to process directly. This self-destructive grief differs from the healthy grief process, where a person feels pain, processes that pain through expression and support seeking, and gradually integrates the loss in ways that allow them to move forward. Instead, the avoidance defended structure prevents healthy grief processing, leaving them to manage their suffering through behaviors that provide temporary escape or numbness, while ultimately deepening their pain and preventing genuine healing. The self-destructive patterns often manifest through substance use that increases after the loss, alcohol consumption that exceeds previous patterns, drug use that provides temporary escape from emotional pain, reliance on substances to sleep or to manage anxiety that losing you has generated. The avoidant, who previously drank socially, begins drinking alone regularly, using alcohol to numb the feelings they cannot process directly. They may use substances before bed to avoid lying awake thinking about you, may use them during lonely evenings to escape awareness of your absence, may rely on them to manage social situations that feel more difficult without you as their secure base. The increased substance use reveals the avoidance pain because it demonstrates they are suffering in ways that exceed their natural coping capacity, that they need artificial assistance managing emotional state they cannot regulate internally, that they are choosing temporary numbness over sitting with the pain that healthy processing would require. The self-destructive grief also manifests through deteriorating physical self-care that reveals the avoidance depression and their lack of motivation to maintain well-being. The avoidant may stop exercising regularly despite exercise previously being a consistent part of their routine, demonstrating they lack energy or motivation to engage in activities that support their physical and mental health. They may eat poorly, either skipping meals because they lack appetite or overeating comfort foods in attempt to manage emotional pain through physical satisfaction. They may let their living space deteriorate into disorganization or uncleanliness that reveals their internal state. Despite their defended external presentation, they may sleep excessively as escape from consciousness or may develop insomnia from ruminating about you and about what they lost. All these deteriorations in basic self-care demonstrate the avoidant is struggling profoundly with the loss even when they present externally as if they are managing adequately. The avoidant may also demonstrate pain through impulsive decisions and choices that reflect their destabilization rather than their usual defended control and autonomy. They may make sudden major life changes, moving to new city, changing jobs, ending other relationships, attempting to escape from reminders of you, or trying to create fresh start that might allow them to outrun the pain. They may engage in risky behaviors that were previously uncharacteristic, reckless driving, unsafe sexual encounters, financial decisions that lack their usual caution, demonstrating that their internal regulation has collapsed in ways that manifest through external loss of judgment and impulse control. These impulsive patterns reveal that losing you has destabilized the avoidant's usual defended functioning, that they are acting from a place of pain and dysregulation rather than from their typical defended calculation and control. The self-destructive grief particularly manifests through the avoidant's pursuit of inadequate replacement connections that serve to temporarily distract from pain rather than to build genuine new relationship. The avoidant may quickly involve themselves with someone new, using that involvement to avoid sitting with grief about losing you, attempting to prove to themselves they can move on, seeking to replace functions you served without doing the internal work that genuine healing would require. Yet these replacement connections tend to be shallow and short-lived because the avoidant is using them defensively rather than engaging authentically, because they are attempting to fill void you left rather than building something genuine with new person, because they are running from pain rather than processing it in ways that would prepare them for healthy new connection. The avoidant may also engage in patterns of isolation that exceed even their usual defended separateness, withdrawing from friends and social connections in ways that leave them alone with their pain without support systems that could help them process the loss healthily. Where the avoidant previously maintained some social connections, even if somewhat superficial, after losing you, they may retreat into complete isolation, declining invitations, avoiding social contexts, spending extended periods alone in ways that indicate they are not happily independent, but rather are withdrawn into their suffering. This isolation prevents the avoidant from receiving reality checks or support that might help them process grief more healthily, while ensuring they remain stuck in rumination and pain without external resources to help them move through it. The self-destructive patterns also reveal themselves through the avoidant's neglect of responsibilities and goals that previously mattered to them. The avoidant may allow work performance to decline, demonstrating they lack motivation or concentration to maintain their usual professional standards. They may abandon personal goals or projects they were pursuing, lacking energy or interest to continue working toward things that felt important before they lost you. They may let important relationships deteriorate through neglect, failing to maintain connections that require effort, because they lack capacity to invest in anything beyond managing their internal pain. These deteriorations across multiple life domains reveal that losing you has affected them so profoundly that they cannot maintain their usual functioning even in areas unrelated to the relationship. Understanding that the avoidant demonstrates grief through self-destructive patterns requires recognizing that these behaviors serve as defended expression of pain. The avoidant cannot process directly or express openly. The avoidant cannot cry, cannot reach out for support, cannot talk about their feelings about losing you in ways that would allow healthy grief processing. Instead, their pain leaks out through deteriorating self-care, through substance use that numbs feelings, through impulsive choices that reflect destabilization, through isolation that leaves them alone with suffering they lack tools to manage. The self-destructive patterns reveal that the avoidant is not fine despite their defended presentation, that they are suffering in ways that manifest through behavioral deterioration rather than through emotional expression, that losing you has created crisis that exceeds their coping capacity, despite their reluctance to acknowledge or seek help for their struggle. The loss triggers recognition spiral where they finally see what they had. The avoidance pain about losing you intensifies through progressive recognition of what you specifically provided, who you actually were, and what your presence in their life meant, recognitions that their defensive structure prevented them from fully acknowledging while you were available and accessible. During the relationship, the avoidance defenses minimized your significance, took your contributions for granted, focused on your limitations rather than on your extraordinary qualities, positioned your care as baseline expectation rather than as exceptional gift. These defensive minimizations allowed the avoidant to maintain emotional distance and defended comfort by ensuring they never fully recognized how much you enhanced their life, how rare the qualities you possessed were, how fortunate they were to have someone so patient and understanding willing to love them despite their patterns. The permanent loss of you eliminates the defensive need to minimize your significance, allowing delayed recognition to emerge of what they actually had with you and what their patterns cost them. The recognition spiral often begins with the avoidant acknowledging specific ways you enhanced their daily life that they failed to appreciate while you were present. They notice the absence of small things you did that made their life function more smoothly, the ways you managed logistics they now must handle alone, the emotional support you provided during stressful periods that they must now navigate without your steadying presence, the comfort of coming home to someone who was genuinely interested in their day, the security of having someone who knew them well and remained consistently available. Each recognition of something you provided that they took for granted generates painful awareness of what they lost, of how extensively you enhanced their life in ways they never adequately acknowledged or reciprocated. The recognition deepens as the avoidant begins seeing your exceptional qualities clearly for the first time without defensive filters that minimized your value. They recognize that your patience with their patterns was not standard expectation, but rather was extraordinary tolerance that most people would not provide. They acknowledge that your understanding of their defended struggles reflected remarkable emotional intelligence and generosity that is rare to find. They see that your consistency, despite their withdrawal, demonstrated loyal commitment that they failed to appreciate or reciprocate adequately. They realize that your willingness to see beneath their defenses to their wounded authentic self represented gift of being truly known, that their defensive structure prevented them from fully receiving or valuing while they had access to it. The recognition spiral intensifies through the avoidance attempts to find what you provided in other connections, and discovering that what you offered was not easily replaceable standard relationship components, but rather was your specific irreplaceable presence and qualities. The avoidant dates others and discovers that new partners lack your particular patience with defended behavior, your specific understanding of their patterns, your unique way of creating safety where they could occasionally be vulnerable. Each comparison reinforces recognition of what they lost, not generic good partner, but rather you specifically with your particular constellation of qualities that match their defended needs in ways no one else can replicate. This recognition that you are not replaceable variable, but rather were specific, irreplaceable person whose absence cannot be filled by finding someone adequate, generates acute pain because it forces acknowledgement that they lost something unique that their patterns may prevent them from ever finding again. The recognition also extends to acknowledging that you saw who they actually are beneath their defenses and loved them anyway. Gift the avoidance core wound, convinced them was impossible. The avoidance defensive structure developed partly around belief that being truly known leads to rejection, that if someone sees their defended, wounded, authentic self, that person will find them inadequate and will leave. Yet you saw beneath their defenses, understood their patterns and their wounds, knew them in their defended complexity, and rather than rejecting them, you loved them and remained patient through their limitations. This recognition that someone truly knew them and stayed, rather than leaving, forces the avoidant to face that their core fear was not realized with you, that they had exactly what their wounded self believed was impossible, that their defensive structures' predictions were proven wrong by your continued presence and love, despite your full awareness of their defended limitations. The recognition spiral creates particular pain when the avoidant realizes that losing you might represent losing their best chance at sustainable, intimate relationship. They recognize that your specific combination of patience, understanding, willingness to see beneath their defenses, and capacity to maintain consistent presence despite their withdrawal is exceptionally rare, that most people would have left far sooner than you did, that most would not have provided the extensive accommodation you offered, that finding someone again with your particular qualities who would be willing to tolerate their patterns is statistically unlikely. This recognition generates devastating awareness that their defended patterns cost them not just good relationship, but potentially their best or only realistic chance at building life with someone who could work with their defended limitations while loving their authentic wounded self. The recognition also forces the avoidant to confront that the problems they focused on during the relationship were not problems with you, but rather were problems with their own defended capacity. During the relationship, the avoidant's defenses generated complaints and criticisms. You were too emotional, too needy, too demanding, wanted too much closeness. The loss and the recognition spiral reveal that these problems were not your inadequacies, but rather were evidence of your normal, healthy relationship needs, that their defended limitations prevented them from meeting. The avoidant sees clearly that you were not too much. They were not enough. You did not have excessive needs. They had inadequate capacity. The relationship did not fail because you were wrong for them. It failed because their defended patterns prevented them from showing up adequately for someone who was actually right for them. Understanding that loss triggers recognition spiral requires acknowledging that the avoidance pain intensifies rather than diminishes across time as accumulating recognitions force them to see what they lost more clearly than they saw it while they had it. The recognition that you were extraordinary rather than standard, irreplaceable rather than one option among many, providing rare matching of their defended needs rather than offering baseline relationship components, loving them truly despite knowing them fully. All these recognitions generate intensifying grief, because each recognition represents something the avoidant failed to appreciate adequately while they had access to it, something they lost through their patterns, something they may never find again. The delayed recognition forces the avoidant to live with acute awareness of what they had combined with devastating knowledge that their defended limitations cost them something irreplaceable. They lacked wisdom to value appropriately until permanent loss forced clarity, their defenses prevented during the relationship. They show pain by becoming the person you needed after you're gone. The avoidant demonstrates their pain about losing you through tragic pattern of developing the capacities, the insights, and the behavioral changes that you needed from them during the relationship. Developing these capabilities only after losing you has eliminated their opportunity to demonstrate changed behavior with you. Only after your absence has created conditions where transformation can no longer repair what their patterns destroyed. The avoidant, who could not provide emotional availability during the relationship, becomes more emotionally available in future connections. The avoidant, who could not communicate effectively about their feelings, develops better communication skills they use with others. The avoidant, who could not prioritize relationship adequately, learns to make intimate partnership more central priority in ways that benefit people who come after you. This post-loss transformation reveals the avoidance pain because it demonstrates that losing you taught them lessons they could not learn while having you. That permanent loss created motivation for change that your patience and your request for change during the relationship could not generate. The transformation emerges partly through the avoidance processing of what their patterns cost them. Losing you forces recognition that their defended limitations have real consequences, that their patterns do not just create temporary discomfort, but rather destroy relationships with people who matter, that their defended comfort is not worth the cost of losing someone significant. This recognition creates motivation for change that did not exist while you remained available. While you stayed despite their patterns, the avoidant faced no urgent need to transform because their defended position remained sustainable without transformation. Your permanent departure eliminates this comfortable sustainability by demonstrating definitively that their patterns have costs they can no longer avoid facing. The painful recognition that they lost you because of their defended limitations creates motivation to address those limitations so that future losses might be prevented.